Okay, so here we are on quiz number 11, question 1. Notice it says solve by completing the square. This means you must use this method. So on the exam that we take, you're gonna need to actually use the method of completing the square. In other words, you can't use the quadratic formula. So what's the first step? Divide by number that's in the front of y squared. So divide through by 9 all the way through. Boom. So what do you get? You get y squared minus 12 ninths. I'm going to reduce that, divide by 3, huh? Divide by 3, top and bottom, 4/3 y, minus 1/9 is 0. Move last number over, so move this 1/9 over. So we get y squared minus 4/3 y equals, and there's a 1/9 over there. Okay, now step 2. These are the instructions here. Step 2. Take the number next to y over 2 squared, add to both sides. So I'm going to take this number over 2. Now how do I do it? How do you do a fraction over 2? You multiply by 2 in the denominator, squared. See what I did? I took the fraction, put a 2 in the denominator. That's the same thing as dividing by 2, multiplying 2 in the denominator. What becomes of that? Well, 2 goes into 4 2 times. It's minus 2/3 squared. It's positive 4/9. That's the completing number. You need to add 4/9. Let me get a little room here. Add 4/9 to both sides. Okay. Then these three numbers are guaranteed to factor. How will they factor? It's always the left factors as y plus or minus the parenthesis number squared. What parenthesis number? This number. The number in the parentheses becomes the number in the parentheses. You see that? The parenthesis number. You see how that's right? That left side, let me just show that real quick. See that left side, y minus 2/3 y, that's what squared means, 2 of them, right? If you FOIL that out, you say you'd get y squared minus 2/3 y minus 2/3 y plus, negative times negative, plus 4/9. And see that's minus 4/3 in the middle, that's this, and it's plus 4/9. See how it's right? See how it's actually true? If you FOIL that out, it's right. So let me get rid of that. You don't need to do that. I'm just proving that it's true, that the way we just factored it is accurate. Okay, and what's the other side? These two make 5/9. All right. Step 4, root and plus or minus root. So now you put a root over this side and a root plus or minus on that side. The rooting cancels the squaring, and you get y minus 2/3. I almost got it here. Y minus 2/3 is plus or minus the square root of 5, the square root of 9. So you put the square root on the top and the bottom because that square root's over the whole 5/9. And what is the square root of 9? It's 3. Move that over. Y equals 2/3 plus or minus the square root of 5/3. There's the two answers. That's how you have to do this problem, by completing the square. You would get the same answer if you did the quadratic formula, you know, the negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. You'd get the same answer, but this is required. You've got to show this method on the next test. Okay, number 2 here. The dog pen must have an area 100 square feet. The length is 50 longer than the width. So if this is like width and length, area for a rectangle is width times length. That's a multiply there, width times length. And we know the area is 100, so 100 is width times length. And then it says length is 50 longer than width, 50 plus W. So what do I do with that? I grab that and I plug it in right there for L. So let me bring it down here, 100. Here, let me change the color. Is width times length. What's length? 50 plus W. Okay, let's take it from there. Distribute. 100 is 50W plus W squared. Okay, so now I have a W squared equation. How do you handle W squared, or let's just call it X squared, any X squared, with an equal sign? What do? Step 1, get a 0, right? That's how you solve these things. Get a 0. Step 2, factor, try to factor. So I'm gonna subtract 100 from both sides. That gets a 0. I'm going to reorder this, put the W squared in the front, then the 50W, then the minus 100. How do we factor that now? Well, let's do the diamond. What multiplies to be minus 100 adds to be 50. What times what is 100? 10 times 10? That's not going to make 50 though. 5 times 20. 4 times 25. Okay, nothing works. Nothing works. It's not going to factor. So what do you do if it doesn't factor? Let's go to a fresh screen here. So this is still number 2. And I've got 0 equals W squared plus 50W minus 100. So I'm going to use the quadratic formula, right? If it doesn't factor, negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. That's what W will equal. So a is 1, b is 50, c is minus 100. Negative b, so negative 50 plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2a. W equals negative 50 plus or minus square root of 50 squared, 2500, negative times negative, positive 400 over 2. So negative 50 plus or minus the square root of 2900 all over 2. Now, how do we simplify that? Well, let's say this is minus 50 plus or minus 2900. Let me bring 20 is 29 times 100, and 100 is 10 times 10. Right there is 2 tenths. I don't need to break that down to 2525. Why bother? Right now I've got 2 tenths. So if you've got 2 of anything, right then, ship out a 10, and the 29 remains inside over 2, like that. Is that good to there? And now you can divide. The 2 goes into 50 25 times and into 10 5. So I've got minus 25 plus or minus 5 root 29. That's the width. Let's go to this problem keeps going and going. Let's go to a fresh screen here. So the width is minus 25 plus or minus 5 root 29. Well, that means the width is minus 25 plus 5 root 29, or the width is minus 25 minus 5 root 29. That one's impossible because that would be negative. This is negative, this is negative, this is negative. You can't have a negative width in the real world. So we throw that answer out. So the only width is this. This is the correct answer for the width. What's the length? Remember what we had back here for the length? 50 plus W. So the length, 50 plus W, the length is 50 plus, and then you just plug all of this in there for W. And you get minus 25 plus 5 root 29. 50 minus 25 is 25 plus 5 root 29. There's the length. There's the width. We got it. Okay, so how do you do this one? Well, we've got to write 3x plus 1, 3x plus 1, because that's what the squared means, and then I got to distribute here, plus 9x plus 3 minus 4 equals 0. That's a 3 there. Okay, and then distribute out this first part. Boom, boom. 9x squared plus 3x, boom, boom. Plus 3x plus 1 plus 9x plus 3 minus 4 is 0. So I'm going to combine like terms. 9x squared. 3x and 3x is 6, and 9 is 15x. 1 plus 3 is 4, minus 4 is 0. Those just all cancel. Equals 0. That's nice. So what do you do with an x squared equal sign? Step 1, get a 0. We've already got a 0. Step 2, factor. Remember, you try to factor. How do you factor that? Well, there's only two terms. So you take out the GCF, take out 3x. That's what's in common. What does that leave? 3x plus 5, right? If you multiply, that'd be 9x squared. Multiply, that'd be 15x. So I factored that correctly. So now, and then each one equals 0 and solve. So 3x alone is 0, or 3x plus 5 is 0, right? Because if two things are multiplying to equal 0, either one could be 0 to make that happen. Divide by 3, so that answers 0. Move the 5 over. Negative 5, divide by 3. So the answers are 0 and minus 5/3. 0 and minus 5/3 are the two answers on that problem. Okay, so here's the method for this section. So when we have greater than, less than kinds of questions, step 1, what do? We get a 0. Step 2, make it one fraction with the LCD. So step 1, move that over there. And this becomes 4 over x plus 1 minus 3 less than 0. So I just jumped the 3 to the other side, became a negative 3. I really subtracted 3 from both sides. That's step 1. Step 2, combine these into one fraction. So put this over 1. Multiply top and bottom by x plus 1. And so then we make it into one fraction. So it becomes 4 minus 3 times x plus 1 over x plus 1. Clean that up. That's 4 minus, and let me change the color so you can follow that. Minus 3x minus 3 over x plus 1. And that's 4 minus 3, 1 minus 3x over x plus 1 less than 0. Okay, step 3, we do numerator equals 0 and denominator equals 0. Solve both the numerator and denominator equals 0. So grab the numerator and say, okay, numerator equals 0, and grab the denominator, and denominator equals 0. Solve them. So move that 1 over. We get minus 3x is minus 1 divided by minus 3. Boom. Oh, wait, that's positive 1/3. Two negatives cancel. This one, just jump it over. Negative 1. So we got positive 1/3 and negative 1 is the two answers. Step 4, what are we going to do? We put answers on the number line. So I'm going to go to the new screen. I'm going to take, what are my answers? 1/3 and -1. So -1 and 1/3. And the original statement is this one, 4 over x plus 1 less than 3. So I'm going to check a point. Check one point. How about 0, which is right here? Check x equals 0. What am I checking? 4 over x plus 1 less than 3. 4 x plus 1 less than 3. So grab that 0, put it in right there. So we get 4 over 0 plus 1 less than 3. 4 over 1 less than 3. 4 over 1. 4 over 1 is 4. Is 4 less than 3? No, that's false. 4 is not less than 3, so that's false, which means this is true and this is true. Remember, it alternates true, false, true, or false, true, false. So this section is true, and this section is true. How do we say those two sections? From negative infinity, so the answer, here's the answer. From negative infinity to -1, united with 1/3 to infinity. For each of those intervals, we say left edge, comma right edge, left edge, comma right edge. So negative infinity to -1, 1/3 to infinity. All parentheses, no brackets, because the original problem did not have an equals bar. So you're not equal to any of those numbers. You're not right on any of those numbers. You're just around them, parentheses, not brackets. Here's our answer. Okay, so here we are again. How do we solve the greater than, less than, greater than, equal to, less than, equal? Step 1, get a 0. So let's do that. Jump, so just add, or let's just jump it over. Let's just grab this guy and jump it over. So when something jumps to the other side, it changes sign. So x squared plus 4x greater than 0. There's step 1, get a 0. Step 2, factor. So how do we factor? Take out an x. Factor out an x like that. All right, step 2, factor. Or, you know, before I wrote make one fraction, but we don't have fractions here, so we just factor. Like that. And step 3, each part equals 0. So if we had a fraction, it would be numerator and denominator, but we don't have a fraction. We just have this part alone and this part alone. So each part equals 0. So this one's done. This one, move the 4 over, -4. And then you put the answers on the number line. So this is how you always handle greater than, less than questions. Put a number line. So we're going to go 0 here, negative. We've got to put them in their actual order. -4 comes before 0. Now we're going to check a point. Now I can't check 0 this time. We usually check x equals 0, but not when you go right through 0. So I'm going to have to check something like, how about +1? So right here is +1. So let me check it. Check it where? With what? Check it with the original to find out if it's true or false. So x squared greater than -4x. Plug in the 1 there. So 1 squared greater than -4 times 1, is it? I think so. 1 is greater than -4. Yeah, 1 is greater than -4. That is certainly true. So this is true, false, true. So we got true, false, true again, just like last time. We get that a lot. It doesn't have to be. It can be false, true, false. So what's our answer from negative infinity to -4? Oops. Go back here. United with this interval, which is what? 0 to infinity. 0 to infinity. That's our answer. Two intervals, left edge, right edge, left edge, right edge, left edge, right edge for each chunk of shading. There it is. Okay, so they want us to graph this one. So when you graph, remember how this works? You take the opposite of the number that's in the parentheses and the same as the number that's out here. There's no number out there, so that's 0. So that'll tell you the vertex, which is the center of the U shape. Opposite of -6, +6, and then the same as 0. So +6, 0. So if I go to a graph, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 0, right there, over 6 up 0, that's going to be the center of the U shape. That's the first thing they want. Get that. Now, how do you get one other point? Other point. So other point, it's the slope in front, right? And there's a 1 in front, which means 1 over 1. I mean, there's nothing in front, which means invisible 1, rise over run. So you go up 1 over 1. So up 1 over 1. That dot is the second point. Connect the dots. So this is a U shape going up because the second dot went up. Whenever there's a positive number in the front, the U shape goes up. If there's negative in the front, it goes down because then the rise would be down. So whatever the slope in the front is, whatever numbers in the front, nothing was there. So invisible 1, 1 over 1, rise 1, go up 1 over 1. That gets you your second dot. Connect the dots. There's the graph. They want the vertex. They want the axis of symmetry. And what's that? Well, that's always going to be x equals whatever the x value is, 6. And they want you to put that right on the graph, that dotted line right over at 6. That's the axis of symmetry. This is its equation. It just hits the x-axis right here at 6. It's a dotted line going right through the middle of the U shape. That's why it's the symmetry axis. So this is how you do the problems when they have parentheses squared. You just do opposite, same. That gets you the vertex, and then you do your other point. Now, on the next problem, number 7, let me rewrite it here a little bigger for us. We're not going to have parentheses. There we go. So, right. So, no parentheses. Okay, so for this one, we're going to have to, this one has no parentheses squared. So you find, here's how you find the center when they have no parentheses squared. We can't just do the opposite same thing. What do? X is negative b over 2a. So what do I mean? So this is the a. Let me rewrite this thing. So this function f of x is 1/4 x squared. Notice the middle term is missing. Let me just write in 0x minus 3. That'll help make it easier to see. This is a, b is 0, and this is c. A, b, c. So the b is 0. The middle term, the x term, is missing. So then when we write the formula, x is negative b over 2a. It's negative b. What's b? 0 over 2 times a, 2 times a fourth. 0 over anything is 0. So 0 on the top, that's just 0. And then plug in to find y. So step 2, plug in to find y. What do I mean plug in? Well, back to the original equation again. F of x is 1/4 x squared minus 3. Take that 0, this is y, right? F of x is always y. F of x, g of x functions are always y. Plug in the 0 there, and we get 1/4 times 0 squared minus 3. We get minus 3. So y is minus 3. So we've got the center. The center is 0 for x, minus 3 for y. X, y, 0, minus 3. Okay, so now here's the other trick on this one, though. Then plug in x equals 2 to find a second point. Now, why am I doing that? Well, I just know if I plug a 2 in right there, 2 squared is 4. It's going to cancel that other 4. So f of 2 will be 1/4 times 2 squared minus 3. I just know it'll be easy because that's a 4. This cancel. So that's 1 minus 3, negative 2. See what happened there? So that means the other point, the second point, I plugged in x equals 2. I got out an answer negative 2. That's the y value. So that's the point 2, negative 2, x, y. That's the second point. Let's go to the graph. So now on the graph, what's the center? 0, negative 3. So over 0, down 3, right there. And what's the second point? When I plugged in x equals 2, I got out negative 2, 2, negative 2. So over 2, down 2, right there. So that's how we do our second point. Connect the dots. We've got a U shape. What else do they want from us? They want the vertex. We already got it. That's the center. Axis of symmetry. The axis of symmetry. That's always x equals. They want you to put it on the graph right through the middle. It's x equals the x value, 0. Right? They want you to graph it right on there as a dashed line, right? So it's a dashed line right through the middle, and it's x equals 0 is the equation of the axis of symmetry.